The Art of Self-Leadership, written and published by Echo Elevate. Introduction. The Art of Self-Leadership. Before you can lead anyone else, you must learn to lead yourself. This book is about that skill. Self-leadership is not about control. It is about direction. It is the ability to guide your thoughts, your actions, and your standards, even when no one is watching. Most people wait. They wait for motivation. They wait for confidence. They wait for the right moment. Leaders do not wait. They decide. The purpose of this book is simple. It is to help you become the person who can be trusted with your own life. Not someday. Starting now. Inside this audiobook, you will learn how to take responsibility without pressure. You will learn how discipline creates freedom. You will learn how your identity shapes your behavior. And you will learn how consistent action builds self-respect. This is not a book about managing others. It is a guide to managing yourself, your time, your emotions, your focus, your standards. Every chapter is designed to be clear and practical. No complex theories, no unnecessary language, only principles that can be applied immediately. As you listen, you may notice something change. Your thinking will slow down. Your priorities will sharpen. Your sense of direction will become stronger. Self-leadership is not a talent. It is a daily practice, and like any skill, it improves with use. This audiobook is an invitation to lead from the inside out, to stop drifting, and to start living with intention. Let us begin. Chapter 1. Self-leadership defined. Self-leadership is the quiet force behind every meaningful result in life. It is not loud. It does not announce itself, and it does not depend on recognition. Self-leadership is what happens when no one is watching. It is the choice you make when there is no pressure from the outside. It is the standard you follow when excuses would be easier. Many people misunderstand leadership. They believe leadership begins with authority over others. But true leadership begins with authority over self. Before you manage a team, you manage your habits. Before you influence a room, you influence your emotions. Before you direct others, you must direct your own behavior. That is self-leadership. At its core, self-leadership is the ability to guide your thoughts, actions, and decisions with intention. It is the practice of acting in alignment with your values. Even when motivation is low, it is the discipline to choose long-term direction over short-term comfort. Consider a simple example. Two people wake up at the same time. Both have goals. Both have responsibilities. One gets up and follows through. The other delays, scrolls, and drifts into the day. The difference is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not opportunity. The difference is self-leadership. Self-leadership is not about perfection. It is about consistency. It is not about doing everything right. It is about doing the right things, repeatedly. Many people wait to feel ready before acting. They wait for confidence to arrive. They wait for clarity to appear. Self-leaders act first. Clarity follows action. Confidence is built through movement. This is an important shift to understand. Self-leadership does not begin with feeling strong. It begins with choosing responsibility. It begins with deciding that your life deserves direction. Responsibility is often misunderstood. Some hear the word and feel pressure. Others feel blame. But responsibility is neither punishment nor weight. It is power. When you take responsibility, you regain control. You stop reacting and start directing. You move from victim to architect. Self-leadership also means self-regulation. You learn to pause before reacting. You learn to manage emotion without suppressing it. You learn to respond instead of explode. This does not make you passive. It makes you precise. A person who leads themselves well does not waste energy. They choose where attention goes. They choose how effort is spent. This skill becomes especially valuable under pressure. Imagine a moment of stress. a deadline, a conflict, a setback. Most people allow emotion to take over. They rush. They speak without thinking. They abandon standards. A self-led person slows down. They breathe. They assess. They act with intention. This ability separates calm strength from chaos. Self-leadership also shapes identity. You do not become confident by thinking about confidence. You become confident by keeping promises to yourself. Each small follow-through becomes proof. Over time, this creates self-trust. Self-trust is the foundation of inner leadership. When you trust yourself, decisions become easier. Doubt loses its grip. Direction becomes clear. Self-leadership is also deeply practical. It shows up in how you use time. It shows up in how you speak to yourself. It shows up in how you prepare when no one is checking. It is not about extreme discipline. It is about daily alignment. Small actions done consistently outperform big intentions done occasionally. This book does not ask you to change everything at once. That approach fails most people. Instead, it teaches you how to lead yourself one decision at a time, one standard at a time, one habit at a time. As you continue through this audiobook, you will see self-leadership from many angles: discipline, identity, emotional control, time management, standards. But everything begins here. If you understand this chapter, you understand the foundation. Self-leadership is the skill of becoming someone you can rely on, someone who acts with purpose, someone who follows through. When you lead yourself well, progress becomes predictable, results become repeatable, and growth becomes sustainable. This is not a personality trait. It is a practice. And like any practice, it improves with use. Now that self-leadership is defined, the next step becomes clear. You must decide to take ownership. That is where true leadership begins. Chapter 2. Responsibility is the starting point. Every lasting change begins with one decision. That decision is responsibility. Responsibility is the moment you stop waiting for life to improve and choose to improve yourself. It is the point where excuses lose power and action becomes possible. Many people avoid responsibility, not because they are lazy, but because responsibility has been misunderstood. Some believe responsibility means blame. Others believe it means pressure. Some see it as a burden that limits freedom. In truth, responsibility does the opposite. Responsibility creates freedom. When you take responsibility, you gain control. When you avoid it, control disappears. Think about a simple situation. Two people face the same setback: a missed opportunity, a failure, an unexpected problem. One person says, "This should not have happened." They focus on circumstances. They focus on others. They wait for relief. The other person asks a different question: "What can I do now?" That question changes everything. Responsibility does not mean you caused every event. It means you choose how to respond to every event. It means you accept ownership of the next move. This mindset is the starting point of self-leadership. Without responsibility, discipline feels forced. Without responsibility, goals feel heavy. Without responsibility, progress depends on mood. But with responsibility, action becomes intentional. Responsibility turns reaction into direction. This shift may feel uncomfortable at first. Comfort often lives in excuses. Growth lives in ownership. Self-leaders understand this early. They do not ask who is at fault. They ask what must be done. This does not make them cold. It makes them effective. Responsibility also clarifies priorities. When you accept responsibility, time becomes valuable. Energy becomes intentional. Distractions lose appeal. You begin to notice how often responsibility has been delayed. I will start when things slow down. I will focus when I feel ready. I will act when conditions improve. These thoughts sound reasonable, but they postpone leadership. Responsibility does not wait for ideal conditions. It moves within current ones. A self-led person understands this truth. They start where they are, with what they have, and they adjust along the way. This is how momentum is built. Responsibility also changes self-talk. Instead of saying, "I cannot," the question becomes, "How can I?" Instead of saying, "This is unfair," the thought becomes, "What is my role?" This language matters. The way you speak to yourself shapes behavior, and behavior shapes identity. Each time you choose responsibility, you reinforce a powerful message. I am someone who acts. Over time, this message becomes belief. Responsibility also strengthens emotional control. When responsibility is avoided, emotions lead. Frustration takes over. Anger drives decisions. Fear delays action. When responsibility is accepted, emotions are managed. They are acknowledged, not obeyed. You may still feel stress. You may still feel doubt, but you act anyway. That is self-leadership in motion. Consider responsibility in daily life. Waking up when the alarm sounds. Preparing instead of procrastinating. Listening instead of reacting. Finishing what you start. These moments seem small, but they are not. Each one is a vote for the person you are becoming. Responsibility does not require perfection. It requires honesty. Honesty about effort. Honesty about habits. Honesty about standards. A self-led person does not hide from truth. They use it. Responsibility also removes resentment. When you stop expecting others to change first, frustration fades. When you stop waiting for permission, progress accelerates. This is why responsibility is the starting point. Without it, self-leadership remains a concept. With it, self-leadership becomes practice. This book will introduce tools, habits, and principles. But none of them work without responsibility. Responsibility is the doorway. Everything else follows. As you continue listening, remember this. You do not need more motivation. You need more ownership. You do not need perfect conditions. You need clear decisions. Responsibility is not something you carry. It is something you choose. And the moment you choose it, leadership begins. Chapter 3. Identity shapes direction. Every action you take begins with a belief about who you are, not who you wish to be. Not who you plan to become, but who you believe yourself to be right now. This belief is your identity. Identity is not a label given by others. It is the story you repeat to yourself. It is the quiet agreement between your thoughts and your actions. Most people try to change their results without changing their identity. They set goals. They make plans. They push for motivation. But identity always wins. If your actions do not match your self-image, the action will not last. You may start strong, but eventually, you return to what feels familiar. This is why identity shapes direction. Consider a simple example. Two people decide to exercise. One says, "I am trying to work out." The other says, "I am someone who trains." The actions may look similar at first, but the direction is different. One depends on mood. The other depends on identity. When action is tied to identity, it becomes natural. When action fights identity, it becomes exhausting. Self-leadership begins with this awareness. You are not controlled by habits. Habits are controlled by identity. If you see yourself as undisciplined, you will act that way. If you see yourself as responsible, your choices will align. This is not about pretending. It is about choosing deliberately. Identity is built through evidence, not affirmations alone, not positive thinking alone. Identity grows through action. Every small promise you keep becomes proof. Every standard you honor becomes reinforcement. This is how self-leaders are formed. They do not wait to feel confident. They act in alignment with who they choose to be. Confidence follows behavior. Identity also influences decision-making speed. When identity is clear, decisions are simple. You know what fits. You know what does not. There is less debate, less hesitation, less inner conflict. A self-led person does not ask, "What should I do?" They ask, "What would someone like me do in this moment?" That question creates direction. Identity also protects focus. When identity is weak, distraction wins. When identity is strong, distractions lose power. You stop negotiating with temptation. You stop explaining yourself. You move with clarity. This does not mean you never struggle. It means struggle does not define you. Identity is not fixed. It is shaped daily. You shape it by how you respond to discomfort. You shape it by what you tolerate. You shape it by what you repeat. Every decision is a vote for discipline or delay, a vote for growth or drift. Self-leadership requires conscious identity selection. You must decide who you are becoming, not once, but repeatedly. This is where many people hesitate. They fear commitment. They fear pressure. They fear failing an identity they claim. But identity is not a prison. It is a direction. You are not locking yourself in. You are guiding yourself forward. A self-led person does not chase motivation. They live from standards. Standards come from identity. If you identify as someone who follows through, you do. If you identify as someone who avoids discomfort, you will. This is not judgment. It is cause and effect. Identity also shapes resilience. When setbacks happen, identity determines response. If identity is fragile, failure feels personal. If identity is grounded, failure becomes feedback. You do not quit who you are. You adjust how you act. This creates durability. Self-leadership is not about intensity. It is about alignment. When identity and behavior match, effort feels lighter. Progress feels natural. As you move through this audiobook, you will refine many skills. Discipline, time use, emotional control, but all of them depend on identity. Without identity, discipline collapses under stress. Without identity, responsibility fades under pressure. Identity is the compass. It points you forward even when the path is unclear. In the next chapter, you will learn why discipline outperforms motivation. But remember this first. Discipline is easier when identity is clear. Decide who you are. Then let your actions follow. That is how direction is shaped. Chapter 4. Discipline over motivation. Motivation is a feeling. Discipline is a decision. Most people build their lives on motivation. They act when they feel inspired. They pause when the feeling fades. This approach feels natural. It also fails most people. Motivation is unpredictable. It rises and falls. It depends on mood, energy, and environment. Discipline does not depend on feeling. It depends on commitment. This is why discipline outperforms motivation. Self-leadership requires reliability. You must be able to count on yourself. That cannot happen if action depends on emotion. Think about a simple routine. An alarm rings in the morning. Motivation says, "Stay comfortable." Discipline says, "Stand up." Both voices are present. Only one leads. Discipline is not harsh. It is supportive. It removes daily negotiation. It replaces debate with structure. When discipline is in place, fewer decisions are needed. You act because the decision was already made. This creates consistency. Consistency builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence builds identity. This cycle does not start with motivation. It starts with discipline. Many people believe discipline means forcing yourself. They imagine pressure and restriction. True discipline is simpler. It is the ability to do what matters, even when comfort calls louder. Discipline is choosing long-term benefit over short-term relief. Self-leaders understand this trade. They do not chase excitement. They build systems. Systems reduce effort. They guide behavior when energy is low. For example, a disciplined person prepares in advance. They organize their environment. They remove friction. This makes the right action easier. Motivation waits for perfect conditions. Discipline creates workable conditions. This difference changes everything. Motivation asks, "Do I feel like it?" Discipline asks, "What is required?" The second question produces results. Discipline also protects focus. When motivation fades, distraction grows. Social noise increases. Procrastination becomes attractive. Discipline anchors attention. It creates non-negotiables. Time blocks, clear boundaries. These are not rigid rules. They are supports. Discipline is self-respect in action. When you follow through, even on small commitments, trust grows. You prove to yourself that your word matters. This trust is powerful. It reduces inner resistance. It reduces hesitation. It creates calm confidence. Discipline also changes how you handle setbacks. When motivation is the driver, setbacks feel discouraging. You question yourself. You stop. When discipline is the driver, setbacks are expected. You adjust. You continue. Discipline is not emotional. It is practical. It does not require intensity. It requires repetition. Small actions done daily outperform big efforts done occasionally. This is where many people go wrong. They try to change everything at once. They rely on motivation to carry them. Discipline works differently. It starts small. It builds slowly. It compounds. Self-leaders understand compounding. They respect daily actions. They protect routines. They honor standards. They do not wait to feel ready. They act because it is time. Discipline also creates freedom. This may sound contradictory, but it is true. When discipline guides your behavior, chaos decreases. Decisions become simpler. Life becomes lighter. You spend less time recovering from poor choices. You spend more time building. Motivation promises excitement. Discipline delivers progress. One fades quickly. The other lasts. As you continue this audiobook, you will learn how to manage time and energy. Those skills depend on discipline. Without discipline, plans remain ideas. With discipline, ideas become results. Remember this. Motivation is a visitor. Discipline is a resident. If you want to lead yourself well, choose the resident. In the next chapter, you will learn how to manage your inner voice. Because discipline becomes easier when self-talk is clear. But for now, understand this truth. Discipline is not something you are born with. It is something you practice. And every practice makes leadership stronger. Chapter 5. Mastering the Inner Voice. Every action begins with a conversation. That conversation happens inside you. Your inner voice is always speaking. It comments. It warns. It questions. It repeats. Most people never learn to guide this voice. They listen without challenge. They react without awareness. Self-leadership begins when you notice the voice. It deepens when you learn to direct it. The inner voice is not the enemy, it is a tool. When left unmanaged, it creates doubt. When trained, it creates clarity. Think about a moment of hesitation. You know what needs to be done. Yet something pulls you back. A thought appears. This can wait. Now is not the right time. What if this fails? These thoughts feel real, but they are not commands. They are suggestions. Self-leaders learn this distinction. They do not silence the inner voice. They shape it. Mastering the inner voice starts with awareness. You cannot change what you do not notice. Pay attention to patterns. Notice when the same phrases appear. Often, the voice speaks in absolutes. Always, never, everyone. These words exaggerate. They increase emotion. They reduce choice. A self-led person slows the voice down. They replace exaggeration with precision. They replace emotion with clarity. Instead of saying, "I cannot do this," the voice becomes, "This is uncomfortable." Instead of saying, "I always fail," the voice becomes, "This attempt needs adjustment." This shift is powerful. Language shapes experience, and experience shapes behavior. The inner voice also affects discipline. When discipline is weak, the voice negotiates. It looks for exits. It offers relief. Skip today. Start tomorrow. One time will not matter. Self-leaders hear these thoughts without obeying them. They understand the voice is trying to protect comfort. But comfort is not the goal. Progress requires guidance. Mastering the inner voice means deciding which voice leads. There is the reactive voice, and there is the directive voice. The reactive voice responds to feeling. The directive voice responds to standards. Self-leadership means strengthening the directive voice. You do this through repetition. Each time you act despite resistance, the directive voice grows stronger. Each time you delay, the reactive voice gains ground. This is not about harsh self-talk. It is about clear self-talk. Harsh language creates tension. Clear language creates movement. A self-led inner voice is calm. It is firm. It is specific. It does not shout. It does not insult. It directs. Another key aspect of inner voice mastery is timing. Do not argue with the voice in the moment of action. Decisions should be made in advance. Plan when you are calm. Execute when resistance appears. This removes debate. Self-leaders do not ask, "Do I feel like it?" They say, "This is scheduled." This simple shift quiets the inner noise. The inner voice also shapes emotional response. When something goes wrong, the voice reacts first. It assigns meaning. It labels the event. "This is a disaster." "This proves something is wrong with me." These interpretations increase stress. A self-led voice reframes quickly. "This is feedback. This is a moment, not an identity." This protects momentum. Mastering the inner voice does not mean constant positivity. It means accuracy. You acknowledge difficulty without surrendering to it. You name reality without exaggeration. This balance builds resilience. Over time, your inner voice becomes an ally. It reminds you of standards. It supports follow-through. It reduces emotional waste. You spend less energy fighting yourself. You spend more energy building. As you continue listening, remember this: you are not the voice. You are the one listening, and the one directing. When you master the inner voice, discipline becomes easier. Focus becomes sharper. Leadership becomes internal. In the next chapter, you will learn how to direct your time and energy. Because the voice that guides your thoughts also guides your schedule. But for now, begin here. Listen to how you speak to yourself. Then choose to lead the conversation. That is self-leadership in practice. Chapter 6. Time is a leadership tool. Time reveals leadership, not through words, but through use. Everyone has the same number of hours. What differs is how those hours are directed. Self-leadership shows up clearly in time management, not in productivity tricks, but in priorities. Time is not something you control. It is something you allocate. Where time goes, life follows. Many people feel busy, but busyness is not direction. It is movement without leadership. Self-leaders understand this distinction. They do not try to do more. They decide what matters. Time becomes a tool when it is used intentionally. Without intention, time slips into default patterns: scrolling, reacting, responding to noise. This is not a character flaw. It is a leadership gap. Time follows the strongest signal. If purpose is weak, distraction wins. If standards are unclear, urgency takes over. Self-leadership restores signal. It begins with awareness. Notice where your time actually goes, not where you think it goes, not where you wish it went. Truth creates leverage. Many people are surprised by this step. Hours disappear into low-impact activity. Energy is spent without return. Self-leaders do not judge this. They correct it. Time leadership is not about strict schedules. It is about intentional structure. Structure reduces decision fatigue. It protects focus. When time is pre-decided, inner debate decreases. This is why leaders plan ahead. They decide in advance what deserves attention. They remove daily negotiation. A self-led person treats time like currency. They spend it carefully. They invest it deliberately. Every commitment is a trade. When you say yes to one thing, you say no to another. This is not negative. It is reality. Self-leadership means accepting this trade consciously. Instead of asking, "Can I fit this in?" the question becomes, "Is this worth my time?" This question changes behavior. Time leadership also requires boundaries. Without boundaries, time is consumed by others. Requests expand. Urgencies multiply. Self-leaders set limits without guilt. They understand that availability is not leadership. Direction is. This does not mean isolation. It means clarity. You cannot lead yourself if every moment is reactive. Time leadership also connects to energy. Not all hours are equal. Some moments carry focus. Others carry fatigue. Self-leaders align important work with high-energy windows. They protect these windows. They do not waste them. Low-energy time is used differently. Recovery, reflection, preparation. This balance prevents burnout. Time leadership is not about pressure. It is about rhythm. Work, rest, reset. Each has a place. Another key aspect of time leadership is elimination. Growth does not always require adding more. Often it requires removing less important activity. Self-leaders regularly ask what no longer serves direction. They release habits that drain focus. They reduce commitments that dilute effort. This creates space. Space allows depth. Depth produces results. Time leadership also strengthens discipline. When time is respected, discipline becomes easier. You show up because it is time to show up. Not because you feel ready. Not because you feel inspired. Because the decision was made. This reduces emotional resistance. Time leadership also builds self-trust. When you keep appointments with yourself, confidence grows. You prove reliability. Over time, this changes identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through. This is self-leadership in motion. Time leadership does not mean perfection. Some days will drift. Some plans will break. Self-leaders adjust quickly. They do not quit the system because of a bad day. They return to intention. Consistency matters more than intensity. As you listen to this chapter, consider your relationship with time. Does time lead you, or do you lead time? The answer appears in your calendar, in your habits, in your follow-through. Time is always teaching. It shows what you value. It shows what you avoid. Self-leadership means learning from this feedback. In the next chapter, you will explore how standards shape behavior. Standards give time direction. But remember this truth first. Time is not the enemy. It is the instrument. When used well, it builds progress quietly. When ignored, it exposes drift. Lead your time, and you lead your life. Chapter 7. Standards create self-respect. Self-respect is not something you demand from others. It is something you build through your own behavior. At the center of self-respect are standards. Standards are the rules you live by. They are the behaviors you accept. They are the lines you refuse to cross. Most people think confidence comes first. They believe self-respect appears once success arrives. The truth is simpler. Self-respect grows from standards kept, not from praise received. Standards are not goals. Goals describe outcomes. Standards describe behavior. A goal says what you want. A standard says how you live. This difference matters. Goals can be delayed. Standards are practiced daily. Self-leaders understand this. They do not rely on motivation to behave well. They rely on standards. A standard removes negotiation. When a standard is clear, decisions are easier. You do not debate every choice. You act in alignment. For example, If your standard is preparation, you prepare. If your standard is honesty, you speak truthfully. If your standard is follow-through, you finish. No drama, no discussion. Standards create simplicity. Without standards, emotions lead, mood decides, comfort negotiates. This creates inconsistency. Inconsistency erodes self-respect. Each time you break a promise to yourself, trust weakens. Each time you tolerate behavior you know is wrong, confidence fades. This happens quietly. Self-respect rarely disappears in one moment. It fades through small compromises. Standards stop this erosion. They protect your integrity. Integrity is not perfection. It is alignment. Alignment between values and action. Self-leadership demands this alignment. Standards also shape identity. You become what you repeatedly allow. You become what you repeatedly practice. If your standards are low, direction becomes unclear. If your standards are high, behavior sharpens. High standards do not mean harsh standards. They are not about pressure. They are about clarity. A self-led person chooses standards that support growth, not standards that punish failure. For example, a healthy standard says, I move my body daily. It does not say, I must perform perfectly. A productive standard says, I begin on time. It does not demand endless intensity. Standards guide behavior without cruelty. This balance is important. Standards that are unrealistic lead to burnout. Standards that are unclear lead to drift. Self-leaders refine standards over time. They test. They adjust. They commit. Standards also influence how others treat you. People respond to consistency. They trust what is predictable. When you hold standards calmly and consistently, respect follows. Not because you demand it, but because your behavior earns it. This applies to work, to relationships, to personal goals. Standards teach others what you accept. More importantly, they teach you who you are. Self-respect grows each time you honor a standard. Even when no one notices. Especially when no one notices. This builds quiet confidence. Confidence that does not depend on approval. Confidence rooted in self-trust. Standards also protect emotional energy. Without standards, you react often. You explain yourself. You justify choices. With standards, explanations are unnecessary. The decision is already made. This reduces mental noise. You spend less time arguing with yourself. You spend more time executing. Standards also make discipline easier. Discipline without standards feels forced. Discipline with standards feels natural. You are not forcing action. You are honoring identity. This is the deeper role of standards. They are not rules imposed from outside. They are commitments chosen from within. Self-leadership requires this choice. No one can set your standards for you. No one can enforce them consistently. That responsibility is personal. As you listen, consider your current standards. What do you tolerate that weakens self-respect? What behaviors repeat without alignment? Awareness is the first step. You do not need to change everything. You need to choose one standard worth honoring, one behavior that reflects who you are becoming. Self-respect grows from these choices. Quietly, daily, reliably. In the next chapter, you will learn how emotional control strengthens leadership under pressure. Standards provide the foundation for that control. But remember this truth. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You live at the level of your standards. Choose them carefully. Honor them consistently. That is how self-respect is built. Chapter 8. Emotional control builds authority. Authority is not given by position. It is revealed through behavior, and nothing reveals authority faster than emotional control. When pressure rises, emotions respond first. Stress tightens the body. Thoughts speed up. Reactions become tempting. Most people allow emotion to lead in these moments. They speak quickly. They react defensively. They give control away. Self-leaders do the opposite. They pause. That pause is not weakness. It is strength. Emotional control is the ability to remain steady when conditions are unstable. It is the skill of choosing response over reaction. This skill builds authority. Authority is felt when someone stays calm under pressure, when their voice does not rise, when their decisions remain clear. People trust those who are not ruled by emotion. Self-leadership demands this trust first within yourself. If emotions control your actions, leadership collapses internally. If you guide emotions without suppressing them, authority grows. This distinction matters. Emotional control does not mean ignoring feelings. It means understanding them without obeying them. Emotions are signals, not instructions. A feeling of anger may signal a boundary. A feeling of fear may signal risk. A feeling of frustration may signal misalignment. Self-leaders listen to these signals, then they decide. They do not let emotion choose the action. Consider a moment of conflict. Someone challenges you. Words feel sharp. The urge to react appears. Reaction promises relief, but relief is temporary. Reaction often creates damage that lasts. A self-led person slows the moment down. They breathe, they listen, they choose language carefully. This restraint creates authority. Others feel it immediately. Authority is not about dominance. It is about presence. Presence comes from control. Emotional control also protects decision quality. Strong emotions narrow thinking. They reduce options. They push toward extremes. When emotion leads, choices become impulsive. Self-leaders protect decision-making space. They delay important decisions when emotions are high. They revisit choices when calm returns. This discipline prevents regret. Emotional control also strengthens self-respect. Each time you manage a difficult emotion well, trust grows. You prove to yourself that you are capable under pressure. This confidence is quiet, but it is durable. Emotional control is built through practice, not in calm moments, in uncomfortable ones. Each challenge becomes training. You notice the emotion, you name it, you breathe through it, you choose response. This sequence builds mastery. Self-leaders do not aim to eliminate emotion. They aim to shorten recovery time. They may feel frustration, but they return to clarity quickly. They may feel fear, but they move forward anyway. This creates resilience. Emotional control also improves communication. When emotion runs high, words become careless, tone sharpens, meaning distorts. Controlled emotion allows precision. You say less, but what you say carries weight. People listen. Authority grows from this consistency. Emotional control also sets standards for others. When you remain calm, you lower the temperature of the room. When you stay steady, chaos loses momentum. This influence is subtle, but powerful. It does not require explanation. It is felt. Self-leadership requires emotional accountability. You are responsible for how you respond, not for how others behave. This mindset restores power. You stop blaming circumstances for reactions. You stop excusing behavior with emotion. You choose leadership. Emotional control also supports long-term thinking. Strong emotions focus on the present moment. Leadership considers future impact. A self-led person asks, "What will this choice create later?" This question redirects action. Emotional control is not suppression. Suppression builds tension. Control builds clarity. You allow emotion to pass without letting it drive. This skill grows with repetition. The more you practice, the faster you recover. The steadier you become. Over time, emotional control becomes part of identity. You are known as someone who remains composed, someone who does not overreact, someone who can be trusted under pressure. That reputation begins internally. As you listen to this chapter, reflect honestly. Where do emotions lead too often? Where does reaction replace intention? Awareness is the first step. You do not need to master every emotion at once. You need to pause one moment longer than before. That pause is leadership. In the next chapter, you will learn how action builds self-trust. Emotional control makes that action possible. Remember this. Authority is not claimed. It is demonstrated. And emotional control is one of its strongest signals. Lead yourself here, and others will feel it without being told. Chapter 9. Action builds confidence. Confidence is often misunderstood. Many people believe confidence must come first. They think confidence is a feeling that appears before action. They wait for it. That waiting keeps them stuck. Confidence does not lead action. Action leads confidence. This is one of the most important truths of self-leadership. Confidence is not something you find. It is something you build, and it is built through action. Consider how confidence actually forms. No one feels confident doing something they have never done. Confidence grows after experience, after effort, after repetition. Yet many people expect confidence to arrive before they begin. Self-leaders reverse this pattern. They act while uncertain. They move while unsure. They learn while doing. Confidence follows. Action creates evidence. Each time you act, you collect proof. Proof that you can handle discomfort. Proof that you can adapt. Proof that you can recover. This evidence strengthens belief. Belief strengthens confidence. This cycle only begins with action. Inaction produces the opposite effect. When you delay action, doubt grows. Questions multiply. Fear fills the space. The mind does not stay neutral. If action does not lead, imagination will. Self-leaders understand this. They do not wait to eliminate fear. They move despite it. Fear loses power through exposure. Action shortens fear's lifespan. Confidence is also specific. You are not confident in everything. You are confident in what you practice. A person confident in one area may hesitate in another. This is normal. Confidence grows where action is repeated. This removes pressure. You do not need to become confident in life. You need to act in the areas that matter. Action also builds competence. Competence creates calm. When you know you can handle challenges, anxiety decreases. You stop overthinking. You stop exaggerating risk. This calm feels like confidence, but it came from action. Self-leadership requires accepting imperfect starts. Waiting for readiness delays growth. Readiness is a result, not a requirement. You do not need perfect conditions. You need a first step. Self-leaders focus on progress, not performance. They aim to begin. They adjust as they go. This approach builds momentum. Momentum simplifies everything. When momentum is present, action feels lighter. Resistance weakens. Confidence accelerates. This is why small actions matter. You do not build confidence through grand gestures. You build it through follow-through. Keeping small promises. Completing simple tasks. Showing up consistently. Each action reinforces identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who acts. This identity strengthens confidence further. Self-trust grows here. Self-trust is the quiet belief that you will do what you say. It does not require praise. It does not depend on outcome. It grows through reliability. Action builds this reliability. Even failed actions contribute. Failure is not the enemy of confidence. Avoidance is. Failure teaches adjustment. Avoidance teaches helplessness. Self-leaders understand this distinction. They separate outcome from effort. They judge themselves by willingness to act, not by perfect results. This keeps confidence stable. Action also builds courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is movement in its presence. Each time you act despite fear, courage strengthens, and courage feeds confidence. This cycle compounds. Confidence does not arrive suddenly. It accumulates quietly, day by day, action by action. Self-leadership is built the same way. You do not become a self-leader by thinking about leadership. You become one by leading yourself in small moments. Choosing action when delay is easier. Choosing effort when comfort calls. These moments shape you. As you listen to this chapter, consider where action has been delayed, not because you are incapable, but because you are waiting to feel confident. That feeling will not arrive first. Action must come before belief. Start small. One decision, one step, one follow-through. Let confidence grow naturally. In the next chapter, you will learn how to lead yourself into the future, how to sustain direction over time. But remember this truth now: confidence is not a requirement for action. It is a reward for it. Lead with action, and confidence will follow. That is how self-leadership becomes real. Chapter 10. Leading yourself into the future. Self-leadership does not end with understanding. It continues through direction. What matters most is not what you have learned. It is how you carry it forward. Leading yourself into the future means creating continuity. It means applying principles consistently, not occasionally. It means becoming the kind of person who does not drift. The future is shaped quietly, not by big moments, but by daily decisions. Self-leaders do not wait for clarity to appear someday. They create clarity through action now. The future responds to leadership in the present. Many people think about the future with hope or worry. Hope without structure fades. Worry without action grows. Self-leadership replaces both with intention. Intention is direction backed by commitment. You have already explored responsibility, identity, discipline, inner dialogue, time, standards, emotional control, action. Now comes integration. Leading yourself into the future means turning these principles into a system. A system does not depend on motivation. It depends on alignment. Self-leaders design their lives to support the person they are becoming. They do not rely on willpower alone. They shape environment. They shape routines. They shape expectations. This reduces friction. The future becomes easier to move toward. One of the most important future-focused skills is self-correction. No plan remains perfect. No routine stays ideal forever. Self-leadership means adjusting without quitting. When something stops working, you do not abandon the direction. You refine the approach. This mindset prevents collapse. Many people fail not because they choose the wrong path, but because they quit after disruption. Self-leaders expect disruption. They prepare for it mentally. They know progress is not linear. They know consistency beats intensity. Leading yourself into the future also means thinking long-term. Short-term comfort often competes with long-term growth. Self-leaders recognize this tension early. They ask different questions. What does this choice create over time? Who does this habit turn me into? Does this action align with my standards? These questions shape direction. The future is not built by chance. It is built by repeated alignment. Self-leadership also requires renewal. You cannot lead well without rest. You cannot think clearly without recovery. Leading yourself forward includes protecting energy. Burnout does not come from effort alone. It comes from effort without alignment. Self-leaders pause strategically. They reflect. They reset. Reflection keeps direction clean. Without reflection, habits become automatic, and automatic behavior can drift. Leading yourself into the future means reviewing your own leadership. What is working? What is slipping? What needs adjustment? This review is not judgment. It is guidance. Self-leaders coach themselves. They do not attack mistakes. They extract lessons. This approach builds durability. Another key aspect of future leadership is patience. Growth compounds slowly. Results often lag behind effort. Self-leaders trust this process. They do not rush identity. They do not chase shortcuts. They understand that who they become matters more than speed. This patience keeps momentum alive. Leading yourself into the future also means letting go. Not every habit belongs in the next chapter of life. Not every identity remains useful. Self-leadership allows evolution. You release what no longer supports direction. You adopt what aligns with growth. This flexibility prevents stagnation. The future rewards adaptability. But adaptability requires a stable core. That core is built through standards, through discipline, through responsibility. These do not change with circumstances. They anchor leadership. As you move forward, remember this: you will not always feel strong. You will not always feel certain. Self-leadership does not require either. It requires follow-through. On difficult days, lead yourself gently. On strong days, lead yourself firmly. Both matter. The future does not ask for perfection. It responds to consistency. Every day you lead yourself well, you reduce future resistance. You simplify future decisions. You strengthen future confidence. This is the quiet reward of self-leadership. You build a life that supports you, not one that constantly fights you. As this audiobook comes to a close, understand this: self-leadership is not a destination. It is a practice. You do not arrive. You continue. And every time you choose responsibility, every time you act with discipline, every time you manage emotion, every time you honor standards, you are leading yourself forward. The future is listening. Lead with intention, and it will follow. Conclusion: become the person you can follow. Leadership does not begin with others. It begins with you. Throughout this audiobook, one truth has remained constant. The quality of your life is shaped by how well you lead yourself. Not in public moments, but in private ones. Self-leadership is revealed in small decisions: how you use your time, how you respond to pressure, how you speak to yourself, how you act when no one is watching. These moments may seem ordinary, but they are powerful. They decide direction. Becoming the person you can follow does not require perfection. It requires honesty. It requires consistency. It requires willingness. Willingness to take responsibility. Willingness to act before confidence appears. Willingness to hold standards even when it is uncomfortable. This is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming aligned with your values, aligned with your direction, aligned with the future you want to build. Self-leadership simplifies life. When you lead yourself well, decisions become clearer, energy becomes focused, progress becomes steady. You stop drifting. You stop reacting. You start choosing. There will be days when discipline feels heavy, days when motivation disappears, days when doubt speaks loudly. These days are not failures. They are training. Leadership is practiced in resistance, not ease. Each time you show up anyway, self-trust grows. Each time you follow through, identity strengthens. Each time you pause instead of react, authority deepens. This is how confidence is built: quietly, reliably. Becoming the person you can follow means keeping promises to yourself, especially the small ones. It means respecting your own time. It means managing emotion with care. It means choosing long-term direction over short-term relief. No one else can do this for you, and no one needs to. Self-leadership is personal. It is internal. It is available every day. You do not need a new beginning. You need a new standard. You do not need more information. You need more alignment. You already know what matters. Now it is time to live it. As this audiobook ends, the practice continues. One decision at a time, one action at a time. Become someone you respect, someone you trust, someone you would willingly follow. That is the art of self-leadership, and it begins again today.